Throughout human history, the question of God has intrigued philosophers, theologians, and scientists alike. Is God an external force, a creation of human consciousness, or something entirely beyond our comprehension? In a groundbreaking scientific experiment, a team of interdisciplinary researchers set out to answer this age-old question. Combining cutting-edge neuroscience, quantum physics, and ancient spiritual traditions, the experiment aimed to discover not only if God exists, but also what God is. The results were astonishing, shaking the foundations of science, religion, and philosophy. Dr. Eliza Wren's journey to the experiment began years earlier, in the echoing halls of academia, where she had carved a reputation as a prodigy in theoretical physics. Her groundbreaking work on quantum entanglement had earned her numerous accolades, yet something gnawed at her, a sense of incompleteness. The deeper she delved into the mechanics of the universe, the more elusive its ultimate meaning seemed. Her equations were elegant, her theories robust, but the questions that haunted her were unquantifiable. Why does the universe exist at all? Is there a purpose to its design, or is it a product of randomness? And above all, could the force that religions call God be more than an illusion of the human mind? Dr. Wren's dissatisfaction grew as she observed the rigid boundaries within the scientific community. Conversations about spirituality or the divine were dismissed as pseudo-intellectual distractions. But she had begun to notice strange correlations in her research, patterns in quantum behavior, subatomic particles reacting to observation, the inexplicable coherence of entangled particles across vast distances seemed to whisper of something greater. Yet to suggest such a thing in her field was tantamount to professional suicide. It was during this period of professional isolation that she crossed paths with Dr. Akhil Sharma, a neuroscientist specializing in consciousness. Sharma's research into near-death experiences and altered states of mind had long placed him on the fringes of mainstream science. He had documented countless cases where individuals reported profound encounters with what they described as divine beings or universal truths during moments when their brains were clinically near shutdown. While critics dismissed these phenomena as mere hallucinations or neurochemical artifacts, Sharma was unconvinced. His data suggested that these experiences were not random but highly structured, even consistent across cultures and belief systems. Their initial meeting was serendipitous. Dr. Wren had been invited to deliver a lecture on the implications of quantum entanglement at an interdisciplinary symposium. As she outlined her ideas about the universe's interconnected fabric, Dr. Sharma sat in the audience, riveted. During the Q&A session, he stood and posed a question that changed everything. Do you think these connections might extend to human consciousness? Could quantum phenomena explain spiritual experiences? The room fell silent. Wren hesitated, scanning the faces of her colleagues, some of whom were visibly skeptical. Yet something in Sharma's tone, earnest and unapologetic, compelled her to answer honestly. I think it's possible, she admitted, but it would require a paradigm shift, a way to bridge the gap between the physical and the experiential. After the lecture, Sharma approached Wren, and the two began a conversation that would span hours, then days, then months. Their discussions ranged from quantum theory to ancient mysticism, from neuroscience to metaphysics. Wren found in Sharma a kindred spirit, someone unafraid to explore the intersections of disciplines typically kept apart. Together they began to formulate an idea, a bold, audacious experiment that could probe the nature of divinity scientifically. To bring their vision to life, they needed someone who understood the cultural and historical dimensions of their question. Enter Dr. Maria Ortega, a theologian with a background in comparative religion. Ortega had spent her career studying the common threads in humanity's spiritual narratives, from the monotheistic traditions of the Abrahamic faiths to the cyclical cosmologies of Hinduism and Buddhism. She was known for her ability to approach these traditions with both academic rigor and deep reverence, a rare balance that had earned her respect across religious and secular communities alike. When Wren and Sharma approached Ortega with their proposal, she was intrigued but cautious. "You're asking me to bridge worlds that have been at odds for centuries," she said during their first meeting. "Science seeks evidence. Faith often thrives in its absence. How do you plan to reconcile the two?" "We're not looking to disprove or validate any particular belief," Wren explained. "We want to understand the mechanisms, the underlying phenomena that might give rise to these experiences. If there's something there, something measurable, we owe it to humanity to find out." Ortega agreed to join them, though not without reservations. She warned them of the backlash they might face, not only from their respective fields, but also from religious communities who might see their work as an intrusion on sacred ground. Nevertheless, she was drawn to the idea of uncovering truths that could unite rather than divide. The trio spent years in preparation. They secured funding from unconventional sources, private donors intrigued by the fusion of science and spirituality, as well as organizations seeking to push the boundaries of human understanding. They assembled a team of experts from various disciplines: engineers to design the experimental apparatus, psychologists to analyze the subjective experiences of participants, and philosophers to help frame their findings in ways that could resonate with a global audience. The team's early debates were intense, often contentious. Should they focus solely on individual experiences of the divine, or attempt to detect an external presence? Should they include only religious individuals in their study, or also atheists and agnostics? How could they ensure their methods were rigorous enough to withstand scrutiny while remaining open to phenomena that defied conventional explanation? In the end, they decided on a multi-pronged approach. Their experiment would combine advanced neuroimaging techniques with quantum sensors capable of detecting minute fluctuations in energy fields. They hypothesized that if God, or some universal force, existed, it might manifest as a measurable resonance during moments of profound spiritual experience. To capture these moments, they would create environments designed to evoke the divine, sacred music, meditative practices, and other stimuli drawn from diverse spiritual traditions. As plans took shape, the team faced relentless skepticism. Colleagues dismissed their work as scientific mysticism. Media outlets, catching wind of their project, ran sensationalized headlines that alternately mocked and lauded their efforts. Yet for every critic, there were also those who saw the potential in their endeavor. Letters poured in from people around the world, some sharing deeply personal spiritual experiences, others urging the team to challenge the boundaries of knowledge. By the time the experiment was ready to begin, the researchers had become something of a movement. Their work represented not just an attempt to answer one of humanity's oldest questions, but also a call to transcend the silos that divided disciplines, beliefs, and ways of knowing. For Dr. Wren, it was a culmination of her lifelong quest to find meaning in the cosmos. For Dr. Sharma, it was a chance to validate the profound experiences he had studied. And for Dr. Ortega, it was an opportunity to bridge the sacred and the scientific in a way that honored both. They had no illusions about the enormity of their task. The question of God was vast, fraught, and likely unanswerable in any definitive sense. But as they prepared to embark on their experiment, they felt something close to faith, not in any deity, but in the power of human curiosity to illuminate even the deepest mysteries. The creation of the divine resonator, the central device of the experiment, was a feat of engineering that combined the expertise of multiple disciplines, each contributing its own layer of complexity. Early in the planning phase, the research team realized that existing technology was woefully inadequate for their purposes. They weren't merely attempting to map brain activity or detect quantum phenomena. They were attempting to do both simultaneously while analyzing their interactions in real time. To achieve this, they needed to invent an entirely new class of machine. The conceptualization of the resonator began with Dr. Eliza Wren's deep understanding of quantum systems. She proposed that if the divine or some universal force existed, it would likely manifest not in conventional physical forms, but in the subtle interplay of energy at quantum levels. This idea aligned with emerging theories in quantum physics, suggesting that the universe itself might operate like a giant quantum network, with information and energy flowing seamlessly across time and space. Dr. Akhil Sharma added another layer to the challenge. His work in neuroscience had shown that profound spiritual experiences often coincided with unique patterns of neural activity. The prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, and even the brain's default mode network all played roles in what people described as encounters with the divine. However, these patterns varied depending on the individual and the cultural context of their experience. Capturing these neural signatures in conjunction with quantum-level data required unprecedented precision. The first design sketches of the resonator looked like something out of science fiction. The device needed to be capable of simultaneously performing high-resolution fMRI scans, EEG monitoring, and quantum resonance imaging, a technology that didn't yet exist. To develop it, the team recruited Dr. Liang Chen, an engineer specializing in quantum computing. Dr. Chen's breakthrough came when she proposed integrating a lattice of superconducting qubits into the machine's architecture. These qubits, suspended in a cryogenic environment, would serve as ultra-sensitive detectors, capable of capturing quantum fluctuations at near-zero temperatures. This system, she explained, would allow the resonator to detect patterns in quantum energy fields that might correlate with neural activity. The integration of these components presented its own challenges. The brain's electrical signals, for instance, generated electromagnetic noise that could interfere with the qubit's sensitivity. To solve this, the team designed an elaborate shielding system using layers of mu metal and graphene to create an environment nearly free of external interference. The resonator itself was housed in a specially constructed chamber, insulated from seismic vibrations, electromagnetic waves, and even stray cosmic radiation. While the technical aspects of the machine were daunting, the team also had to address the human element. How would volunteers interact with the resonator during the experiment? Early prototypes were intimidating, large, cold, and alien in appearance. Recognizing the psychological impact this might have, Dr. Maria Ortega suggested redesigning the interior to evoke a sense of calm and reverence. The final version of the resonator featured soft lighting, comfortable seating, and an acoustic system that could play music or ambient sounds tailored to the participants' cultural background. The chamber was adorned with subtle, abstract patterns inspired by sacred geometry, creating an environment that was both scientific and meditative. As the resonator neared completion, the team faced another critical decision: how to design the protocols for the experiment. They wanted to create scenarios that could reliably evoke spiritual or transcendent experiences in participants without imposing any specific belief system. To achieve this, they consulted a diverse array of religious and spiritual leaders, including Buddhist monks, Sufi mystics, Christian priests, and indigenous shamans. These consultations provided invaluable insights into practices that transcended cultural boundaries, such as rhythmic chanting, focused breathing, and the use of symbolic imagery. One of the more contentious debates within the team revolved around the use of sensory deprivation. Dr. Sharma argued that isolation tanks, which deprived participants of external stimuli, could heighten their sensitivity to inner experiences and potentially reveal deeper connections to the divine. However, Ortega cautioned against this approach, noting that it might alienate participants unfamiliar with such practices. Ultimately, they decided to include a range of conditions, allowing each volunteer to choose the method that resonated most with their personal beliefs or preferences. Recruiting volunteers proved to be another challenge. The experiment required individuals from diverse religious, cultural, and philosophical backgrounds to ensure the findings were as inclusive as possible. A carefully worded public call for participants was issued, emphasizing that the experiment was not about validating or invalidating any particular faith, but about exploring the universal dimensions of human spirituality. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people applied, each with their own stories of divine encounters, unanswered questions, or a simple curiosity about the nature of existence. After a rigorous selection process, the team narrowed the pool to 50 participants. They ranged from devout believers to atheists, from spiritual seekers to skeptics. Among them were a Catholic nun, a Buddhist monk, a Sufi poet, an astrophysicist, and even a vocal atheist who had written extensively about the illusion of free will. Each participant underwent extensive psychological and medical evaluations to ensure their readiness for the experiment. The day the resonator was activated for its first trial was marked by a mix of excitement and trepidation. The machine's systems hummed to life, its superconducting circuits glowing faintly as liquid helium cooled them to near absolute zero. The team gathered in the observation room, watching as the first participant, a middle-aged woman who described herself as spiritual but not religious, entered the chamber. She sat in the resonator's ergonomic chair, her face calm but expectant. As the session began, the resonator's sensors sprang into action. EEG monitors tracked her brainwaves, fMRI scans mapped her neural activity, and the qubits recorded minute fluctuations in the surrounding quantum field. The chamber filled with the soothing sounds of a Tibetan singing bowl, chosen based on her preference for meditative music. As the minutes passed, her neural patterns began to shift, entering a state commonly associated with deep meditation or prayer. Then something unexpected happened. The quantum sensors detected a subtle but distinct resonance, an oscillation in the energy field surrounding her. The pattern was faint but unmistakable, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to align with her brain activity. The team watched in awe as the resonator's data streams converged, revealing what appeared to be a bridge between her internal experience and the external quantum environment. This was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, as more participants underwent sessions in the resonator, similar patterns began to emerge. While each individual's experience was unique, there was a recurring theme. Moments of profound spiritual connection coincided with measurable shifts in both neural and quantum data. The team's initial skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. They were on the brink of something extraordinary, a discovery that could redefine humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the cosmos. But questions remained. What exactly was the resonator detecting? Was it capturing evidence of a universal force, or merely the echoes of human consciousness interacting with the environment? And if it was the former, what implications would it have for the world's religions, philosophies, and sciences? As the resonator's sessions continued, these questions loomed larger. The machine had begun to reveal glimpses of a hidden reality, but it would take time, analysis, and perhaps a leap of faith to fully understand what it all meant. The initial results from the divine resonator sent shockwaves through the research team. Data collected during the first round of experiments revealed something extraordinary, a recurring pattern of resonance that seemed to connect each participant's experience of the divine, regardless of their cultural or religious background. This resonance manifested as a subtle but consistent oscillation in the quantum field, aligning with distinct neural signatures that appeared during moments of profound spiritual connection. The implications were staggering. For the first time, there was measurable evidence suggesting that spiritual experiences might be tapping into a universal phenomenon, a field of unity that transcended individual consciousness. Dr. Eliza Wren was the first to detect the pattern in the resonator's quantum data. At first, she thought it was a glitch. The oscillations were faint, almost imperceptible, and appeared only under specific conditions. But as more sessions were conducted, the same pattern emerged again and again. What made it even more remarkable was its consistency across participants with vastly different spiritual practices. A Catholic nun praying the rosary, a Sufi mystic performing dhikr, and an atheist meditating on the vastness of the cosmos all triggered similar fluctuations in the quantum field. The discovery electrified the team. Dr. Akhil Sharma was equally astonished by the corresponding neural data. He had spent years studying altered states of consciousness, but the resonator revealed something he had never seen before: a unique synchronization of neural activity in regions associated with self-awareness, emotion, and sensory perception. This synchronization appeared to peak during what participants described as moments of transcendence or oneness. It was as if their brains were tuning into the same frequency, a shared state of being that defied explanation. The team dubbed the phenomenon the unity field. Their preliminary hypothesis was that this field represented a kind of universal substrate, an underlying layer of reality that interconnected all things. While the term field was borrowed from physics, its nature remained elusive. Was it an emergent property of consciousness, a fundamental aspect of the universe itself, or something else entirely? The participants' accounts added another layer of complexity. Despite the consistency in the resonator's data, the subjective experiences varied widely. Some described feelings of overwhelming love and interconnectedness, as though they were embraced by the universe itself. Others reported visions of light, geometric patterns, or even divine beings. A few participants, particularly those who identified as atheists, spoke of a profound sense of clarity and peace, as if they had momentarily grasped the infinite nature of existence. One participant, a Buddhist monk named Tenzin, described his experience as a deep merging with the fabric of reality. There was no self, no other, he explained during a debriefing session. Only awareness, vast and infinite. It was not God as most people understand the term, but it was divine nonetheless. In contrast, a Christian priest named Father Michael recounted a vision of Christ enveloped in radiant light. "I felt his presence," he said, tears streaming down his face. "It was as real as anything I've ever experienced." These accounts, though diverse, shared a common thread, a sense of connection to something greater than the individual. Dr. Maria Ortega saw this as evidence of the universality of spiritual experience. "The language and imagery differ," she observed, "but the essence is the same. People are touching the same reality, interpreting it through the lens of their own culture and beliefs." As the team continued their analysis, they began to uncover more profound implications. The unity field did not seem to be confined to individual experiences. It exhibited properties that hinted at a broader interconnectedness. For example, during one session, a participant who had no prior connection to another reported vivid imagery that mirrored the other's experience. This synchronicity occurred despite the fact that the two participants were in separate sessions, conducted days apart. It was as though the unity field transcended not only individual consciousness, but also space and time. These findings challenged the team's initial assumptions. Dr. Wren, who had always approached the experiment with a degree of scientific detachment, found herself grappling with questions she had long avoided. "If this field exists," she mused during a late-night discussion with the team, "then what does it mean for our understanding of reality? Is consciousness a product of the brain? Or is the brain merely a receiver for something far greater?" Dr. Sharma, meanwhile, was fascinated by the implications for neuroscience. The resonator's data suggested that the brain was not creating the experience of the divine, but rather tuning into it, much like a radio picking up a signal. "If that's true," he said, "then the unity field might be the missing link between science and spirituality. It could explain why people across cultures and history have reported similar experiences despite having no contact with one another." The discovery also sparked heated debates within the team. Dr. Ortega was particularly concerned about how their findings would be received by religious communities. "This could be a unifying revelation," she said, "but it could also be seen as a threat. If the divine is universal and not confined to any one tradition, some might view that as undermining their beliefs." Her concerns were validated when news of the experiment began to leak to the press. Headlines ranged from sensational to dismissive. Scientists find the fingerprint of God, the end of religion as we know it, and quackery masquerading as science. Religious leaders and scientific skeptics alike began to weigh in, often without fully understanding the experiment's findings. Some accused the team of playing God, while others claimed they were undermining the sanctity of faith by attempting to measure the immeasurable. Despite the controversy, the team pressed on, refining their methods and expanding their data set. They began to explore whether the unity field could be influenced or amplified. Could certain practices or environments make it easier to access? Could trauma or mental illness act as barriers? These questions led to experiments involving group meditations, where multiple participants entered the resonator together. The results were astonishing. Not only did the quantum resonance intensify, but participants reported even deeper feelings of connection and unity. The most startling revelation came during a session involving a skeptic named Dr. Andrew Keller, an outspoken critic of the experiment. Keller, who had agreed to participate as part of a challenge, expected to feel nothing. Yet within minutes of entering the resonator, he reported a profound shift. "It was like stepping into a river," he later said. "I didn't believe in any of this, but I felt it. Something flowing through me, through everything." The unity field had begun to reveal itself as more than a theoretical concept. It was a tangible phenomenon, one that defied traditional boundaries between science, religion, and philosophy. Yet for all their breakthroughs, the team knew they had only scratched the surface. What was the nature of this field? How far did its influence extend? And most importantly, what did it mean for humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the cosmos? These questions loomed large as the experiment moved into its next phase. The unity field had opened a door to a deeper reality, but stepping through it would require not only scientific rigor, but also courage and humility. The team stood at the threshold of a discovery that could change everything, or reveal truths so profound they might defy comprehension. As the experiment progressed, the initial optimism and clarity surrounding the unity field began to waver under the weight of unexpected anomalies. Not all participants experienced the profound harmony or interconnectedness described in earlier sessions. For a subset of individuals, the resonator's data revealed erratic, dissonant patterns that defied the coherence seen in most others. These anomalies were not mere statistical outliers. They were consistent, reproducible, and tied to participants who described their experiences as unsettling, chaotic, or even disturbing. The first such instance occurred with a volunteer named Emily, a young woman who had signed up for the study out of curiosity rather than any deep spiritual inclination. When her session began, the resonator's quantum sensors detected a field resonance, but instead of the smooth, harmonious oscillations seen in previous participants, Emily's data resembled a jagged, discordant wave. Simultaneously, her neural activity spiked unpredictably, showing heightened activity in regions associated with fear and conflict, rather than the calm and unity the team had come to expect. After her session, Emily reported feeling overwhelmed. "It was like standing in the middle of a storm," she explained during her debriefing. "I didn't feel connected to anything. If anything, I felt more alone, like I was being pulled apart." Her words and the corresponding data left the team perplexed. Was this an artifact of the machine, or was it revealing something deeper about her state of mind? As more participants with similar experiences emerged, a pattern began to form. Those who reported dissonant or fragmented encounters often shared common traits: unresolved trauma, deep-seated fears, or rigid dogmatic beliefs about the nature of reality. For some, their experiences seemed to amplify inner conflicts they had not fully confronted. One participant, a man named Marcus, who described himself as a devout atheist, later admitted that he had entered the experiment hoping to prove it wrong. His session, like Emily's, resulted in chaotic resonator data, and his subjective report was equally unsettling. "It felt like my mind was splitting apart," he said. "I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that." The team realized they were uncovering a critical nuance in their study. The unity field, while universal, was not experienced uniformly. For those whose inner worlds were harmonious, the field seemed to enhance their sense of connection. But for those grappling with unresolved conflicts or rigid mental frameworks, it appeared to magnify those struggles. The resonator was not merely a passive observer, it was acting as a kind of mirror, reflecting the participants' internal state onto the quantum canvas. This revelation sent shockwaves through the team. Dr. Sharma, who had long studied the interplay between trauma and consciousness, speculated that the brain's ability to engage with the unity field might depend on its baseline state of coherence. If the brain is a receiver, he explained during one of their late-night discussions, then its tuning matters. A well-tuned receiver picks up the signal clearly, but a damaged one might only get static, or worse, distortion. Dr. Ortega saw deeper philosophical and theological implications in these findings. This mirrors what many spiritual traditions have long taught, she pointed out. The journey to divine connection often requires inner work, purification, forgiveness, and surrender. Those who cling to fear or rigidity may struggle to access that connection because they're trapped in their own mental prisons. The team began to delve deeper into the participants' psychological profiles, comparing them with their resonator data. They discovered that certain emotional and psychological factors seemed to correlate strongly with dissonant experiences. High levels of unresolved guilt, shame, or anger often corresponded to chaotic patterns in the unity field resonance. Conversely, participants who entered the experiment with open minds and balanced emotional states were more likely to experience the harmonious, interconnected resonance that had initially defined their findings. This raised a difficult question. Was the unity field itself neutral, merely reflecting the inner state of the individual, or was it inherently harmonious, disrupted only by the noise of human conflict? The answer was elusive, and the team's discussions often veered into metaphysical territory. Dr. Wren, ever the physicist, proposed that the unity field might function like a standing wave in physics, a system that could resonate beautifully when aligned, but could also become chaotic when disrupted by interference. To test this theory, the team designed a new phase of the experiment. They introduced guided interventions aimed at fostering inner coherence before participants entered the resonator. These interventions included mindfulness meditation, breathwork, and therapeutic dialogue designed to help participants confront and release their inner conflicts. The results were promising. Many participants who had previously experienced dissonant sessions reported more harmonious encounters after undergoing these preparatory practices. The resonator's data reflected this shift, showing smoother oscillations and greater alignment between neural activity and quantum resonance. One particularly striking case was that of Sophia, a woman who had experienced severe trauma in her childhood and had long struggled with feelings of unworthiness. In her initial session, the resonator's data was chaotic, and she described her experience as like staring into an abyss. After several weeks of guided therapy and meditation, Sophia returned for a second session. This time, the data revealed a marked shift. Her quantum resonance was harmonious, and her neural activity displayed the same patterns seen in participants who had described profound spiritual connection. Sophia's subjective experience mirrored this transformation. "I felt whole," she said afterward, tears in her eyes. "For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged." These findings reinforced the idea that the unity field was both a universal phenomenon and a deeply personal one. Accessing it required not just external conditions, but also internal alignment. The resonator, it seemed, was not just a scientific instrument, but also a tool for self-discovery, a means of exploring the intricate interplay between the inner and outer worlds. However, the discovery of these complexities also brought new challenges. The media, which had been following the experiment closely, began to spin the narrative in conflicting directions. Some outlets heralded the findings as proof that spirituality and mental health were deeply intertwined, while others seized upon the dissonant experiences as evidence that the unity field was a hoax or a dangerous manipulation of human consciousness. The backlash from religious communities also intensified. Some leaders, particularly those from more dogmatic traditions, accused the team of undermining faith by suggesting that divine connection was contingent on psychological factors. God's love is unconditional, one prominent cleric declared in a televised debate. To claim that only those who are mentally aligned can access the divine is to reduce God to a machine. Dr. Ortega, who had always been sensitive to these concerns, found herself in the difficult position of defending the experiment's findings while respecting the validity of diverse theological perspectives. "We are not saying that God is conditional," she explained in an interview. "What we are discovering is that the human ability to perceive and experience the divine may be influenced by our own inner landscapes. This does not diminish the divine. It simply highlights the complexity of our relationship with it." As the experiment entered its final stages, the team grappled with the profound implications of their work. The unity field was real, but its nature was far more intricate than they had initially imagined. It was not a singular force or a simple truth, but a dynamic interplay of universal and individual elements. It held the potential to unify humanity's understanding of the divine, but it also demanded that each person confront their own inner world. In this complexity lay both the promise and the challenge of the unity field. It was a mirror, a bridge, and a mystery all at once. A discovery that invited humanity to look not only outward to the cosmos, but also inward to the depths of its own being. The culmination of the experiment brought the team face to face with the enormity of their discovery. The unity field, while elusive and complex, represented a tangible link between the physical and the transcendent. Yet as they compiled their findings, they realized that their work was far from over. The data, the patterns, and the experiences they had documented raised more questions than answers, each as profound as the last. What was the true nature of the unity field? Was it a fundamental force, an emergent property, or something beyond human comprehension? And how could this knowledge reshape the way humanity understood itself and the universe? The process of synthesizing their findings into a cohesive framework was daunting. Over the months of experiments, they had gathered an overwhelming amount of data: quantum field measurements, neural activity patterns, participant testimonies, and psychological profiles. The team worked tirelessly, often late into the night, to piece together a narrative that could encompass the complexity of their results. At the heart of their analysis was the realization that the unity field was not a singular entity, but a dynamic state of interconnectedness. It was less a thing and more a process, a resonance that arose when conditions were aligned. Dr. Eliza Wren proposed an audacious hypothesis. The unity field might be a manifestation of the universe's intrinsic order, a kind of meta-pattern that governed not only physical phenomena, but also consciousness itself. "If we think of the universe as a symphony," she explained during one of their discussions, "then the unity field is the underlying harmony. It's always there, but how we perceive it depends on how well we're attuned to it." Her metaphor resonated deeply with the team. The concept of the unity field as a symphony captured both its universality and its variability. Some participants had experienced it as a soothing melody, others as discordant noise, but the field itself remained unchanged. It was humanity's interaction with it that shaped the experience. Dr. Akhil Sharma, drawing on his expertise in neuroscience, contributed another layer to this understanding. He theorized that the unity field might act as a kind of informational substrate, a network through which consciousness interacted with the physical world. "Our brains are like antennas," he suggested. "They tune into this field, translating its signals into thoughts, emotions, and sensations. The quality of that translation depends on the clarity of the receiver, our minds." This idea sparked a flurry of excitement and debate within the team. If the unity field was indeed a fundamental layer of reality, it could provide a unifying framework for understanding phenomena that had long defied scientific explanation. Near-death experiences, synchronicities, moments of transcendence. It also offered a compelling explanation for the shared elements of spiritual experiences across cultures. The unity field wasn't a deity in the traditional sense, but it was divine in its universality and its capacity to connect. Dr. Maria Ortega, ever mindful of the cultural and ethical implications, urged caution in how they framed their conclusions. "We're treading on sacred ground here," she reminded the team. "For many people, God is not an abstraction. It's a deeply personal relationship, a source of comfort and meaning. We have to present our findings in a way that honors those experiences without reducing them to equations or data points." Her perspective guided the team as they prepared to publish their results. They chose to frame the unity field not as a replacement for religious or spiritual beliefs, but as a bridge, a way to connect diverse perspectives and open new avenues of dialogue. Their report emphasized that the unity field could be interpreted in many ways: as a scientific phenomenon, a spiritual reality, or a metaphor for the interconnectedness of all things. It was not their role to dictate what it meant. Their goal was to share what they had discovered and invite others to explore its implications. The publication of their findings sparked a global conversation. Scholars, religious leaders, and thinkers from every corner of the world weighed in, offering praise, criticism, and everything in between. Some hailed the unity field as the long-sought reconciliation of science and spirituality, a discovery that could unite humanity in a shared understanding of existence. Others were more skeptical, questioning the methodology or accusing the team of overstepping the bounds of science. For the participants, the experiment had been transformative. Many reported lasting changes in their outlook on life, their relationships, and their sense of purpose. Sophia, the trauma survivor who had found peace through her sessions in the resonator, became an outspoken advocate for integrating mindfulness and self-reflection into education and healthcare. "The unity field isn't just out there," she said during a public lecture. "It's in us, and when we heal ourselves, we heal our connection to it." The broader societal impact of the experiment was equally profound. Movements sprang up around the world, inspired by the idea of the unity field. In some cases, these movements sought to transcend traditional boundaries, bringing together people from different faiths and cultures to explore common ground. In others, they focused on personal growth and alignment, offering workshops and retreats aimed at helping individuals tune in to the field. Yet not all reactions were positive. Some religious groups viewed the experiment as a threat, arguing that it reduced the sacred to the merely scientific. A prominent bishop declared that God cannot be measured by machines, while an influential philosopher accused the team of commodifying transcendence. These criticisms, while difficult to hear, underscored the challenge of presenting such a paradigm-shifting discovery in a way that respected diverse worldviews. Within the scientific community, the experiment sparked intense debate. While many hailed it as a groundbreaking exploration of consciousness and quantum phenomena, others questioned its validity. The interdisciplinary nature of the research, which combined neuroscience, quantum physics, and spirituality, was both its greatest strength and its most controversial aspect. "This isn't science," one critic argued during a televised debate. "It's metaphysics dressed up in lab coats." Despite the controversy, the team remained steadfast in their belief that their work had value, not because it provided definitive answers, but because it opened doors to new questions. The unity field, they realized, was not an end, but a beginning. It challenged humanity to rethink its place in the cosmos, to explore the connections between the inner and outer worlds, and to seek harmony within itself. As the experiment's findings continued to ripple through society, the team found themselves reflecting on their journey. For Dr. Wren, the experiment had been a revelation, confirming her intuition that the universe was more than the sum of its parts. For Dr. Sharma, It was a vindication of his lifelong belief that consciousness was the key to understanding existence. And for Dr. Ortega, it was a reminder of the enduring power of humility and wonder in the face of the unknown. In the end, the unity field remained a mystery, not a puzzle to be solved, but a symphony to be experienced. It was a force that defied categorization, a reality that invited humanity to step beyond the limits of its understanding and into the infinite. The experiment had revealed what God might be, not as a being or a concept, but as a resonance that united all things. A mystery that, like the universe itself, was as profound as it was beautiful.